I've always been kind of an in-betweener. I think back to even like middle school, and I was really involved in extreme sports like BMX and snowboarding and punk rock and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I grew up in Utah and I just wanted to be like a good little Mormon kid. It was both of those things. I very deeply wanted both of those things. Or I think about where I've been in the last few years and how much time I've spent in the kind of like masculine, red pill men's self development space, and how much I love and embrace a lot of the things that are taught in there about, like an internal locus of control and having proper, like the stuff that Jack talks about in The Way of Men, and, courage and strength and mastery and honor. And these are great things, but I've also spent some time in kind of like the therapy space, and especially after I lost my brother and when he was going through stuff, and I see some truths in there, or even think about little things like when I first started boxing. I felt like I was the only white collar guy in the gym. That was, I mean, if you feel like lifting is a blue collar thing and all the white collar guys are all doing endurance sports, then that certainly is what it can and does feel like being in a fight gym. And I think that there's some really good things that come from that. I think the first one is that it helps me see a lot of things that other people miss. Um, it's very easy to get domain dependent and to only see things from the perspective of the tribes that we belong to, or kind of like their perspectives on things. Um, it helps me become multidimensional, and I think multidimensional men are competent, capable, interesting, virtuous men. And I would say probably one of the biggest things is that it's increased my tolerance for tension, because when you hold these disparate identities or interact with these very divergent tribes and groups of people, and you find yourself really embracing aspects of all of it, it does create both an external but very much an internal tension. And I think a lot of times it's very easy to feel like you have to pick one or the other, or that you have to take this very like milk toast, middle of the road, none of it really matters type of thing. And I think all of that is just a bid to escape tension. And part of what it is to be a good person, and especially to be a good man, is the capacity and the willingness to hold on to the tension and learn how to manage it and navigate it in the right ways. When I think about what I've done with how I've presented myself online in the past, I think I've only shown one side of who I am. And I want to say this the right way, because I think that what it was not just like, it's this mask that I've put on. I think I was trying to become the mask. And it's not even a mask. That's not the right way to look at it, because it's not false, but it's not entirely true either. I would say that the man that I've been for the last 15 years is somebody who has been hyper focused on aspiration. You know, um, accomplish this, set that goal, hit this milestone, do this thing, and it's really, really good. Aspiration's a really good thing, and I'm grateful for the things that I've been able to accomplish. And not but, and with everything that's happened lately, both in my own personal life and that's happened in kind of like a bigger macro perspective, it feels like what? Like I have sown and plowed the aspiration field quite a few times. And that particular field needs to be given a bit of a rest so it can rejuvenate and it can be revisited again, because the crops are getting worse. Maybe that's a terrible metaphor, maybe not. I don't know. Um, which leads me to think about what the counter to that aspiration is. And I think it's acceptance. And trust me, I hate that word because I get how like therapy coded it is. And I think that a lot of times people tend to treat acceptance as kind of like the anti aspiration, as if these two again are dichotomous, and there's this conflict between them as opposed to there being a tension between them. And one of the things that I've learned as I've spent time kind of like exploring this space of acceptance and really acknowledging this part of who I am is that part of who I am is very aspirational. And I love and I embrace that and I accept that part of who I am. And in a way, that's really nice because it means that I think deep down, I know I've been this way. A lot of my friends that I've talked to or clients that I've talked to have been this way. I think there's this kind of like latent fear for men that if we move into this space of acceptance, then it kills our aspiration. And I get that. There's like valid reason for that. And maybe at least for me, the antidote to that is accepting my own inclinations towards aspiration. That is a big part of who I am, and that's a part that I love and embrace about myself. And so now I'm just trying to learn what it's like to accept the other parts of me, and how can I be a good man, be a good father? How can I date in meaningful ways? How can I restructure my business? How do I change what I'm putting out online and the way that I'm presenting myself to to the people that I want to impact in a way that doesn't skew at all that old highly aspiration. Even that is still wrong. It's not an old version of me. It's just a limited version of me. I am aspirational. And I'm not only aspirational. And so, how do I embody more than just what that aspiration is? How do I accept the things that, like, yes, I am very driven towards traditional masculinity. And I'm also really sensitive and really emotional. And I feel things deeply, and I am not stoic. It doesn't mean that I'm an emotional wreck and I let my emotions run the show, but I feel things. Man, I feel things. Or how do I accept my obligations and my responsibilities to provide and to fill my role as a provider, and at the same time acknowledge how worn out and worn down and how tired I am because of everything that I've been through in the last few years and because of what I've seen it do to my own self-perception and what I've seen it do to my business. These are not necessarily unique questions. I know I'm not the only man who struggles with stuff like this. And that's part of the shift that I'm wanting to make in the way that I approach things and in the content that I put out is I I feel like one of the things that I'm good at is I have the ability to take a little bit more social risk than a lot of people and present truthful things about myself in an honest way that can feel a little bit more exposed. I don't know why I don't have those same kind of like brake lights that a lot of other people have, but I actually feel it's harder for me to hold myself back than it is to put myself out there. And I think it's time for me to lean into that a little bit more. And so one of the things that I'm wanting to do with my content, especially because guys, I was never on top of the mountain, but I've fallen down a long way. My life is not in many ways my life is no longer aspirational, and I get that. And it doesn't mean that I'm a loser, and it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. It just means that I've had some big setbacks, and it's time to dig myself out of them. And there's work in that, and there's pain, and there's struggle, and there's fear and doubt and depression, and there's so it's just messy in there in all of that. And a big part of me has really hesitated in sharing any of that because it's risky. It is risky. But I think I can embrace that risk because it feels honest for me to do that. And not only does it feel honest for me to do that, but one of the other things that I know that I'm really good at is when I get into those tension filled spaces, I have this ability to be able to see patterns and then articulate what those things are in a way that just makes light bulbs go off in people's heads. And I know that I am not even remotely the only man who's in these tension filled places. And so if I can be willing to kind of vocally dive into them and explore them, I don't need to give anybody permission to see those things. And again, that feels very therapy coded to talk about it that way. But what I can do is being in here with you is I can help you see things with a different perspective than a lot of times you can see for yourself. And again, this is not me being the mentor that has been through it all and has conquered it and can give you a step-by-step guide and this platform and everything to get out of it. I can't. I'm still trying to figure out how to get myself out of it. But I know that the first step of being able to get out of it is to being able to clearly see what it is, or to even be able to see that you don't need to get out of it, that tension needs to be embraced. And so this feels right for now, for me to start moving in this direction. I don't have any game plan. I can't have any game plan because this is not content creation the way that it's been done in the past. This is very much more like thinking out loud and live journaling and that type of stuff. And so I don't have any calendar or any commitment or anything like that that I can or would even want to pretend to adhere to. But what I can commit to is a willingness to vocalize where I am as I'm going through all this in the hopes that it can offer perspective and definition for people that are in similar spaces.